Welcome, everyone, to this week's Real Talk with Jill and Tia. We're so happy you're here.
Hello, hello. And we are actually in Mexico this week. We're traveling, which is basically our month of October. It's full of travel. But we've been picking up these great insights from organizations that we've been talking to about culture and people and leadership skills and how to connect. And we hope to spend a little bit of time today kind of talking about that and sharing what we've been picking up on. And we would love to hear your perspective too on, are you talking about these things? Is this a part of your strategy as you go into 2025 and as you think about how are you developing your people?
Yeah. So we, of course, love when you're here, and we love when you drop in the comments, like shout out that you're here and share with, where you're joining us from this week, whether it's live or you are on replay with us.
Yes, yes. And how's your weather? We've been talking about weather. I know we have a hurricane coming for the people that are in Florida. So hopefully you all are safe this week. We're in Mexico. The weather is beautiful here. So we're excited about that. Get us out of maybe cold Baltimore.
Minneapolis is beautiful right now.
This is like your perfect time.
It's perfect
It's
weather
perfect time for
in
you.
the Midwest. It
I
is.
think we're about to have a cold front in Baltimore. So it's nice. It's nice being here.
Yeah. And if it's your first time joining us, welcome. We're so happy to have you with us because Tia and I are on a mission to transform how we lead in food. And that's because we know being in this food space can be tough. But when you have the right support and the right skills, it's 100 times easier. And the more we talk about culture and the more we talk about food safety culture, the more we are not that we realize, we're helping people realize that it comes to people. It comes back to people and being people-centric.
Yes.
So that's what we like to talk about, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, because as we connect with organizations who's looking to push their culture forward, a lot of things that we see is that we lean on our technical skills, which is awesome, right? We need them.
Yes.
But even as we think about new standards that need to be rolled out, or what are our systems look like? How's our organizations going to be structured? Sometimes we forget that we're working with people, and it's great to have this SOP, right? The standard that outlines every detail on what we should do. But we've done that before, right? Like we've had great SOPs, we had great standards that we spent months and months. We roll it out and we're still in the same spot 6 months later, 12 months later. And it's because we haven't actually focused on our people.
Yeah. And that's why it's been great these past few weeks where we have been visiting different client locations and working with their teams, their global teams, their corporate teams all across the board. Because they too are in the spot where they're looking at what do we need to do different for 2025.
Yeah.
And most of them have done food safety culture assessments. They've done some preliminary work on food safety culture. But they're at this spot where they're like, we need more.
Yeah.
Like for us to get to the next level, we can't keep doing the same thing. And so we're thrilled and, of course, honored when they call and say, come help us with what that next step looks like.
And how can we actually drive real change, right? Not just change in the way that we write down our mission or the way that we write, our standards, but how do we actually see that behavior change?
Yeah.
And so we want to talk a little bit about that and start with what we always start with is, where is your mindset?
Yeah.
Right. And how to shift that.
And to kind of preface it, like each of the companies that we've been to, we're going to share like the 3 things that they've all had in common that we've been talking more with about. And yes, everybody has some nuances, but these are the 3 common themes that come through as we're making our rounds on our fall tour.
In the first, right, is mindset.
It is.
And it's one of those things that sometimes people skip this step. Right? We go into, we need to do this work, so let's just get started. But we forget that we have already shifted our mindset, because we probably have been talking about this, with our teams, or, when you think about senior leadership changing the direction or updating the strategy, they've already been having this conversation. And so you're already in the mindset, if you're a part of that team, that we're ready to change, we're ready to transform. But how are you shifting other mindset? How are you going to shift your team's mindset? Are you actually going to make time for that shift, right? Because how long it takes me to shift my mindset is different from how long it might take you to shift your mindset. is that built into your strategy?
Yeah. And I think the other part is, even along the journey, if you've been listening or been with us long enough, I'm happy to share that, I ran into when we were working on consistency and alignment across our organization, across multiple facilities. Like we did pretty good starting off with global policies. Like that drove some change. And then we got to a spot where it was really hard. And we kept trying to kind of push the rope and push the big, heavy ball uphill, and it was not working.
Yeah.
And Tia, one of my favorite memes is like this sign where they're like problem and it's pointing. And that was me.
Bing, 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 bing. Right.
And it wasn't that we weren't doing good work, but I also needed to shift my own mindset as the leader in this area to say, what do we need to do different? What do I need to do different so that others can do things different?
Yeah.
And so it's not just always about preparing everybody else, but even really thinking about how am I contributing to what I see in front of me?
I like this example that you have like from your career, because it shows that you had all the other stuff, right? Like you have already updated your standards, right? You know what to do from a technical standpoint because you have that technical skill. But the thing that was missing, right, is your own mindset. Yes. What are you missing? And you're not going to get that right from a HACCP training course, or you're not going to get that from PCQI, or you're not going to get that from problem solving, even thinking about the problem solving method. You had all that information, right? And in theory, it's supposed to work.
It is.
But if you don't have the right mindset, right? If your team does not have the right mindset, we just have these wonderful things that's just sitting here waiting to be used, but we can't actually use it because we don't have the people.
Yeah. And it came up and it was disguised. Like we would talk about something and we'd be like, oh, I don't think ops is going to be okay with that. So number one, we'd shut them down ahead of time.
Yeah.
But the other part is we also didn't give them credit. Like we sat in this spot where we often were limiting ourselves and what we could do before we even gave them a chance.
Right.
Like, how do we think of it and be like, wow, they are going to be so happy to have clear expectations. They are going to be happy to actually have a partner who wants to work with them to make their system streamlined as we do this together.
Yes.
And it's amazing how we have to shift even those thoughts. And we can't make them disguised like, well, we're just being realistic. When we've tried this in the past, this is what's happened. We have to be willing to let go.
Yes, that language, right? What we're telling ourselves, about others. We talk about this because I have a toddler and I'm focused on, right? Like she's not trying to be difficult, right? When we're trying to pick up things and she's tossing, her milk cup everywhere. She's not trying to be difficult, right? She is expressive. Even thinking about how you express that shifts your mindset. And I love that example of, operations, they're not going to care about that. They only care about cases out the door. If you shift your mindset to say that cases out the door is the reason why each of us have a job.
Yes.
So we all actually care about that. Like we care that we produce quality, safe product so that our consumers and even ourselves, right? We're consumers as well, can enjoy these things. That's not a bad thing, right? We can acknowledge that our operations team also feels overworked. They also feel like they have a lot on their plate. They're in the same boat as we are. We're a part of that same team.
Yeah.
How do we help? Right? How do I be a supporter of what's happening? How do I make sure that I keep them on the right path? Right? Like that's just different language and that shift in mindset.
And I think that actually rolls well into the second thing that we've been talking with people a lot about, which is readiness.
Yes. Yes.
Because even as we just talked about, like we may have the right technical skills. Okay, so the question, the scale here is, are we willing and are we able?
Yes.
That's what helps determine if somebody is ready to move forward. And so when we think about, are there different skills, technical skills someone needs to know, or even soft skills?
Yes.
Like what are those things? If people aren't willing to move into that space, are we willing to dig a little deeper to find out why and what's blocking that?
Right, exactly.
Because no matter how skilled we are, no matter how able, no matter how many SOPs we have or processes to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
If people are not willing to come, you all know just as well as
Yes.
we do, they won't.
Exactly.
And it might look like 100 different things,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we know because we feel it.
Exactly. And so you have to think about, is your team ready? Right? Are they willing to move forward? And if not, you have to spend some time there.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, the other piece of that willingness is able. Are they able to uphold the standards? Right? And I think we start there because we think so technically, right? Do they have the technical skills? But then do they also have the leadership skills to be able to build relationships and to create, safe spaces so you can get accurate and true feedback around, are these standards actually working?
Mm-hmm.
And will they work in your facility? And how do people even feel about it, right? Like, that's really where culture comes from. It's all about their values, beliefs, the assumptions, the norms. Nothing around is this technical piece of paper, is that great? It could be great, but if the values, the beliefs, the assumptions, the norms don't follow along, then you're going to struggle with culture. So do you have those people skills, those leadership skills to be able to influence and shift mindset? And what we see, even as we're traveling, over these last few weeks, is that we struggle with that piece because we haven't really been focusing on those people skills.
No, because we focus on the checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here are the things that we need to get done, and how do we check those off?
Yeah.
And so the other part to consider with that is, if we have a system or a culture where we have people who aren't ready, what does the organization need to do or shift so that they can be ready to help people be ready?
Yes.
Right. Even organizations do things that limit the ability for people to have success within them. You all know that, because we're all working in imperfect systems, some more than others. But how do we also look at our organization to say, what are some of the things that show up where the organization isn't ready yet?
Right.
Or they are not ready to support people moving to these new spaces to be able to move culture forward.
It's almost thinking about, if you are prepared for pushback. So you're going to roll out something and someone gives you the lowdown and they're like, hey, when you roll this out, this is what Tia is going to say, right? This is how she's going to respond to you. So you need to be ready for those responses, right? And then you go in there and I say exactly what someone said that I was going to say. You're ready for those responses. But if you are not actually ready for it, it could kind of get you off your game. You maybe are missing things from the people side in order to roll it out successfully. So you want to make sure you do that pre-work, right? And make sure those people are ready, that you understand what the barriers are going to be, what the obstacles. And you might not have a 100% plan yet. That's okay, because maybe even the people that are calling out these barriers, calling out these obstacles, they might need to be a part of that solution. So you don't have to have all the answers, but knowing that they exist and having the right skills to be able to overcome those obstacles, people skills to overcome those obstacles, that's really when you start seeing that culture shift.
Yeah. And I think that's the other part that we have seen. That's one of the themes that have come through with all the places that we've been visiting. Is like, what are the new skills and how do we acquire them? How do we level up on these skills?
Yes.
Because we all, here we sit and we get along, but getting along doesn't mean we agree on a process going forward.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean we are okay with the changes we want to make.
Exactly.
And so I need to have different skills than just being able to have a conversation with Tia to move that forward.
Right, exactly. And that kind of takes us to our number 3, right? I don't know if you all can hear the music in the background.
For us now.
our mood
Some
music, right? But that kind of takes us into number 3, which is, how do we develop these skills, identify, right, and develop the skills that we need to actually shift attitude, mindset, norms, beliefs, to really shift that into the direction that we want to go in. How do we get those skills is what we're seeing.
And I would say, even to identify, even to be curious about it. So I don't know about you, but early when I had started this journey on leadership and coaching, I probably was like, that's not for me. I'm fine. So I think even as we talk about these skills, I mean, this takes some serious I don't even know if awareness is the right, but reflection.
Yes.
This takes like peeling back a couple layers of the onion, because if your first response is, well, that's not me, I'm doing pretty good there.
Yes.
Like, this is for you.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in a mean way, but I was there. I was the person who said, this is the problem. And I was like, I'm not the problem. Like, you all are the problem.
Right. Yes.
And it takes, some real humility and being able to sit with yourself to say, you know what, there are parts that I'm contributing.
Yes.
And I value understanding what those are so I can move past them so we can get to the next level.
Absolutely. I definitely feel like that is the first step. And as you're thinking about even for yourself, and maybe you're there, maybe you're like, you know what, I do need those different skills, right? Or, maybe you've shifted that mindset to say, okay, I'm more open, right? I've done the work around that piece. Then maybe it's time for you to hone in on those skills, right? Like when I think about my journey, a lot of that sort of came to me where I naturally did those things. But as I grew in my career, I really needed to hone in to how do I influence or show up authentically as myself. We were even talking about this earlier as leaders on how do I show up and connect with people even in different environments, right? On my way to my goal. Like I see the path, right? I see the path to get there, but that path changed based on who I'm talking with. We talk about all the time, right? Like you could have 5 different facilities and 5 different cultures. Well, each of them might have the same, you want to get them to the same goal, but how you get there, how you are building those relationships, how you are influencing them, right? Like if you've been through our program, we've talked about the different influencing methods, right? Which methods are you bringing to each scenario to be able to push that culture forward? It's those things that sometimes as leaders, we almost feel like, well, we're good enough, right? Like I can influence, right? I've had some success in the past, I might have had some roadblocks, but how do you do it on this excellence level?
Yeah. And that takes some real digging because sometimes they are things that are not even in our sight lines.
Yes.
That's why they're called blind spots. But what helps is when you can discover what those are and name it, call it what it is, and then you can move past it.
Yeah. That's why it's important that many people need a partner, right, on this journey, is because someone external, and we've seen it, as we work with our clients, someone external is able to see you in a different light, right? Like we have our own perspectives with ourselves. I have a perspective of Jill. She has one of me. We work closely together. So even that friendship changed the way that we see each other. Having someone be able to tell us, oh, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced. Sometimes we're like, oh, that's interesting, right? Yeah. Like we've never thought to say it that way, or we haven't even seen it, right? Because it's a blind spot. It's one of the reasons why we love doing this work, and we wish that we had it as a part of our career. It's like, if I had this partner to actually help me with this strategy, or help me see the blind spots of myself and my team, how much faster could we go, right? Like it's the reason we're catalysts is because like how can we be that catalyst for organizations to get to where they want to go faster? Yeah.
And it's, one of my favorite quotes is, and I never get quotes quite right. You probably all know that by now, but it's essentially, IQ gets you in the door, EQ gets you success.
Yes.
And so often we still rely on IQ, whether we're going to another, intentional adulteration seminar or fraud or advanced HACCP. Like we typically focus on that, or going to a workshop where there's going to be technical presentations. Yeah. When's the last time that you really sat in? What are these soft skills and how am I building those?
Yes.
Because that's what's going to get you across the finish line and going from good to great and great to superior.
And that's something else that we've been hearing, right?
That's why we love doing these trips. That's what people are ready. These people are ready to do that.
They are, in
a new way.
Yes. And we heard a story, at one of the conferences we spoke at, where we have this leader that's bringing quality in. And she told a story around, she brought someone from the quality team into this conversation with the supplier. And even though they were technically strong, because of their people skills, it actually caused an issue with that supplier that she had to step in and smooth over. So it wasn't the technical skills at all, right?
No.
Like they were brilliant, but it's the EQ, right, that stopped the progress that she was hoping to get. And so seeing that importance and being able to say, okay, how do I take this person that's absolutely brilliant and equip them with the skills to be able to communicate with people that might not know as much as them or might know as much as them, right? But maybe we disagree on the path forward, thinking about conflict resolution. How do I take them and help empower them, right? And give them the skills that they need to be able to effectively communicate and inspire and all of those soft skills that we need to actually push culture forward.
Yeah. And what I love about the work that we've been doing the past few weeks, it's with people who want to partner.
Yes.
So it's not a one and done. It's not, let's just do a workshop and then we'll go on our merry way.
Yes.
It's organizations that are really looking to embody how do we shift culture. Yes. I know I can nerd out over this.
Yes.
But yes, it is what we do, but that's what we're passionate about. Yeah. Like we want people to have more success. And so when they talk about like, how do we do this together and how can Catalyst support us along the way?
Yes.
Yeah. We're pretty happy about that. We're pretty proud to be in this space because it's not something that's been offered that's relatable to the food industry and practical. And we know that. That's why we're here.
Yes. And I feel like that's a shift that's happening. And we want to see more of that, to say like, this is not I have someone come in and speak and we're done, right? Or that, now everyone check, right? That check box of like, we've talked about empowerment, check. Now everyone's just going to go do. Well, we know that that's not the way human behavior, change of human behavior works. Like we know that. So organizations are starting to think about, and the people that we've been talking to over the last couple of weeks, they've really been focused on what is our journey of getting there and how do we make sure that we have those awareness conversations, we have those interactive workshops, right, that we love doing. How do we also couple that with this enrichment along the way, with these building of skills? And I love the way that you said it, Jill, on like, you have to have these pieces in order to build the competencies around it, right? Like, it's not just about, okay, I have these skills, but do I have the competency of building relationships and communication, right?
Very different.
It's very different.
What I loved last week, we ran into another person who had worked with a coach before, and we were just following up, like, what was that like? They're like, life changing. And she's like, I know it sounds so cliche. And this is someone who's like been a VP over food safety and quality for years. And she's like, but it literally changed how I do work and how I show up in life. And so it is hard for us to articulate always what this looks like and why what we do is so powerful. So the best thing is to experience it. And it's more than what you see here on Real Talk.
Yes.
So of course, we're going to invite you to think about like what the rest of your year looks like. And we know we've had people already who've said, you know what, I have some funds that we need to use up because 2024 financial or fiscal year is coming to a close.
Yes.
What do you guys have? And we start programs starting right away in January. January, February, and March are starting points. So now is a great time to put those funds to use so you don't lose them, but also to think about what does 2025 look like for you, and for your team.
Yes, because we've also had a few people reach out to us and say, hey, we need to get a game plan for 2025. And it's funny because, you know, it's some of the people like we've been talking to, right? And it's time to do something different. Right? And more. It's time using the same playbook, which, you know, it's so funny, like even to bring in football. You all know I'm a University of Tennessee fan and we lost our last game and I don't want to talk about it, but it's how do we step outside of that same playbook? Because if something's not working, how do we shift? And we've had people come up to us and say, hey, like we need to talk about how do we shift and do something different in 2025 so we're not in the same place in a year like we have been, right, around culture.
Or doing one workshop at a time,
right,
that hasn't been able to get the progress that you need. Because your businesses, wherever you're working, they have goals. And if we're not ready to keep up with those goals, we know that creates conflict in itself. So if we're going to be the business enablers that we say we want to be in food safety and quality, then we also need to step up our game.
Right. Exactly.
So that's our challenge to you.
Absolutely. And one thing that's funny, and we're talking about it here on, you know, when you see organizations that don't prioritize culture, they do have growth. Right?
They do.
They see growth, and you might say, yeah, we've had some movement. We're down the path, but they still feel this pain, right? They still feel like they're not moving at the pace that they need to be great, to really show this movement. And just the focus on people, right? I mean, it's like times 400.
So Stanford University did a study, and they said companies with weak cultures will still see, just out of normal work, 10% increase in profit. Companies that have strong cultures, 4 times that, 42% more growth.
I mean, that's just like, just think about, right? Like, where do you want to be? Is 10%, is that, if you were here next year and you say, well, we have 10% and that is good enough for us, then continue down your path, right? Let's continue talking about what you're doing. But if you want to see this movement, right? If we want to stop with what we see in the news around recalls or retention and engagement, or, you know, we talk about all the time, when is someone going to say something if they see something, right? I mean, how many years are we going to continue to talk about that before we actually put the resources behind empowering others, so that they will not just be able to see something, say something, but also provide a solution and fix it, right? So that it does not show up again. That's very different than, you know, I just want people to be able to be like, hey, I see that over there. You know, like, we've been there where it's like, okay,
which,
well,
of course,
that
is number one. Because not everybody needs to solve all the problems. I think we know that too.
And it's not necessarily like I need to have the answer to the problems, right? But it's more around that you've heard this problem is
well, we're back.
Yeah, we're back. But, you know, like, when people say, okay, this is what we're seeing, this is what's happening, I don't have a solution for it, but I need your help. That's very different than, oh, I saw it, I told quality should handle it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a different culture. That's a different mindset. And it has nothing to do about what's written on a piece of paper, and everything to do with human relationships and human behavior.
Yeah, so to kind of think back to, like, when we started this, right, our goal was, like, to share some of the things that we see these companies are really starting to understand have an impact on culture. And the ones that we've been really circling around are mindset, readiness, and skills.
Yes.
And so that is the place. That is the sweet spot.
Yeah, and we, like you said, we challenge you to think about, how are you shifting mindset? How are you ensuring that your people are ready? How are you ensuring that your people have the right skills, that you have the right skills, right, to move your organization forward? How are you doing that for the rest of 2024? How can we support you there? And then how do we even support you going into 2025?
Yeah. So as always, we're so happy that you joined us. We love when you drop questions or feedback in the comments. And of course, to connect with us more, join our community.
Yes.
Continue the conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many people in there to be able to mine from people and ask questions. It's just a fantastic avenue for that. So please join our community.
Yes. And of course, we'll be back here, same time, same place next week. And until then, make it a great week.
Bye, everyone.